Welcome to the Cynical Marketers podcast, where the greatest minds in marketing, we think, discuss marketing for an audience of several. And now, your hosts, Mike and Nada. All right, everybody, welcome again to another episode of the Cynical Marketers podcast. We continue to roll along. It's great. And you see, again, we have another new face with us, another guest again this week. This is
very exciting.
I'd like to introduce Theo Collins from Areli Sportswear. Theo, and full disclosure, everybody, I work with Theo. Theo is a client. We've worked together for almost 2 years now, believe it or not. It probably feels longer to Theo.
For Theo, probably.
No.
Theo, when I first started
Welcome,
working with
Theo.
him, that was jet black hair on Theo before he started having to deal with me.
Exactly. That's right. That's true.
So welcome, Theo. Thank you so much. Areli Sportswear. 10 years in business recently, right?
Correct. Yeah, actually 11. 11 as of
11.
February.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Amazing.
That's
Congrats.
fantastic. So it's rare. Now, tell us a little bit about Areli Sportswear. So obviously we know it, but for our several fans out there.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mike and Nada. It's awesome to be here. Yeah, so Areli Sportswear, our main thing is we're a custom uniform manufacturer, and when we say uniforms, we mean sports. So we're in athletics. We focus mostly on basketball, football, and lacrosse. And kind of the genesis of that when we started the business was we wanted to have a sport that covered each season, and so we felt like as we're selling, we're never having really a downtime. We're always moving from one season to the next. So that's how we got to that. And I started the business mostly as a side hustle. My son was a lacrosse player, is a lacrosse player. The club that he was playing for was having some struggles getting product, and so I stepped in. I had some relationships. I've been in team kind of my whole career, so was able to help with some sourcing there and realized there was a need, and then here we are today.
That's amazing.
11 years later. Did you think you'd be here 11 years later when you started doing that? Just kind of as a side hustle?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, I knew that the opportunity had longevity and would be around. I mean, there's always going to be, in my mind, team sports. There's always going to be an emphasis on youth sports, which is really our focus. We do some high schools and we do a few colleges, but it's mostly youth. And there's a few reasons for that, but the main reason for youth sports is that they tend to order uniforms every year, so they have a turnover. Whereas a high school, a youth team may buy 50 to 100 uniforms. A high school is going to buy 15 to 20, and maybe every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things I love about consumer products, consumables, people need to reorder.
Right.
You sell
Right.
durable goods. Somebody buys one time and they never need you again.
Exactly.
Well, we love growing kids, Like that's the beauty of youth sports, right? Like
That's
you
right.
said,
That's right. Yeah,
they're
they
growing
grow.
every year. They're going to need something new. So that's
You
awesome.
just got to feed them.
Yeah.
So your market is obviously very, very competitive, and you deal with, guys like you, right, who kind of started. So you've got big manufacturers out there, and then you have dads in their garage
Correct.
trying to do this too. And then you have overseas manufacturers who are trying to cut out and work direct to consumer. How do you stand out in this as your
Service.
guy here in Chicago?
Yeah. It's all service. It's going to be about, we're trying to be the thing, and you and I have talked about this, Mike, is that we want to take all your stress away. We want you to be able to get your uniform and not have to think about it. So, a lot of people that volunteer to, these youth teams are all volunteer, right? And so we always say, was stupid enough to raise their hand and say, yeah, uniform sounds like fun. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's not fun because they're chasing people for money. They're chasing people for sizes. They have late signups, early signups. There's just a lot going on. And what we try to do is help them create a process or a system around how they're going to place that order. And then we back it up with service, right? Like we're going to, we're organized. We break down so if let's say they've got 150 uniforms across 12 teams, we're going to break, when we deliver that to them, it's going to be all packaged by team so they can easily hand it out. Because I hear horror stories every year about, I got everything in bulk and now I have to separate it. And that to me is just crazy. It seems that to me that's lazy on the manufacturer's side, right? Like if I'm the volunteer who placed these orders, I know the coaches and that's about it. So what I want to do is I want to get my uniforms in individual packs, and I can just take that. Here's 12U, here's 11U, and we just hand it out. They go distribute, and then we're off to the races. Because the other thing that you run into with this is timing, right? Everyone's trying to wait till the last minute because they want to maximize the number of kids that they get signed up. But then they turn around, they want those uniforms in a couple of weeks. And so when they get that, there's not a lot of time for them to like, okay, we got time to hand this stuff out. No, they're having, they got first games, first tournaments, whatever, and they got to have that stuff out. So we think about that entire process. So that's what makes us different than everyone else. And you make a good point. Like, anyone can get into this industry, right? Really anyone. I mean, you can find someone, Alibaba, whatever. You can find someone overseas that will make you uniforms. But scaling it is really, really hard, and it takes more people than you think. Like, you can start out in your garage, and you can handle a few orders a year, no problem. But as soon as there's customer service issues, or as soon as there is, just real growth, it's really hard to do by yourself. And so that us being able to make those steps has been key to us,
Nat and I came from clothing, online clothing, and I had a custom sales team too. And that's a thing people don't get about all of this. When everything goes right, it's all easy, right?
It's seamless and easy, yeah.
But you're dealing with humans all through the chain and all the way at the end. There's going to be mistakes and errors. And that's really how you set yourself apart and the challenge. And if you're that guy in the garage, your margins are so thin too. Like, what happens when Timmy gets it and he's like, oh, you know what? I ordered a medium, but I grew 6 inches in 3 weeks, as these kids do.
Yeah.
I should have gotten an extra large. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, you're the garage guy. You can't eat that. You don't have any margins.
Well, and fixing that issue, one of the things, the story that I tell all my people on my staff is that, like, look, when this order comes in, let's say it's 100 uniforms, it's got to be right. And I tell the factory this too. Like, if we're missing one uniform, I consider that we're cutting our margins in half, because it's going to take me so much time to chase down that last one that. And people fixate on that. I mean, we've lost customers over that because they can't huge orders. This is pre-COVID, where we had people that, again, they're volunteers. And the last thing they want is to be watching their kid play. And then here comes Sammy's mom walking across at halftime saying, where's my kid's hoodie, right? That's a stressful situation for everybody. And, a factory would say, well, look, 1 out of 100, I'm 99% accurate. In any other business in the world, that's really good. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with kids and emotions and that whole thing, and that's a whole different discussion for another day, it matters. So we put a lot of pressure on. Our big thing is this: it took us years to get to this point where we're not going to have a discussion about where the missing uniform is. You're going to replace it, right? So
that 1%.
Yeah.
And the problem for you too is then, because of the reorders, if you got that one wrong and then the factory's like, well, we're 99% accurate, but next season that player's parents are the ones that got voluntold to do uniforms, right? And they're not coming back. They're not going to you. Right. You shafted them last year. Like, I'm not going to you.
Right.
And I love what you said, Theo, about looking at the process holistically. So you're not only looking at things that you need to do as a business owner in your business and production and, all of the steps from getting that lead to getting the uniforms into somebody's hands. You're looking at it even beyond that. Like, how can I simplify this process for everybody, get everything prepackaged, ready to hand out? Like that, I think that is a great way to look at your customer experience, which most businesses don't do. They only focus on the part that pertains to them, right? They don't look
Correct.
at that little, it may seem like, oh, that isn't even really a big deal if I hand out these uniforms in bulk or if I prepackage them, sort them by team. But to the person receiving those uniforms, you just save them hours. And so I love
Right.
that part, that you're looking at the whole process holistically. I think that's sometimes the steps that businesses miss, right? Because it is extra
Sure.
work on you, but it really leaves an awesome impression for your customer then. So
Yeah,
I love that.
Thank you, Nada. That's awesome. I think, too, when we talk about guys that are starting out of their garage or just getting started, that's one piece that they miss, right? Because, and it's easy to miss that, right? Because you can say, well, I can buy it for this, I can sell it for this. Like, that margin's pretty good. If I can sell, 1,000 uniforms a month, man, I'm making really good money. But there's a lot and this is true of any business, there's just a lot more to it than that, right? And for me, unfortunately or fortunately, I got in deep enough that by the time I realized all that, it was too late. But the other thing is for us is, and so going back to what Nada said about seeing that whole process, once we let the uniform go, we have zero control over what happens after that. So you can imagine a scenario where something bad happens and not our fault, but we take the blame because we're not there to defend it, right? If the person, because we'll have situations where, hey, you ordered this number wrong. Well, no, I mean, we send you a roster to approve. You approved it wrong. Now, 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to eat that. I'm just going to eat it. But we don't know what's said on the other end, right? Thinking Areli, messed up my order, right? And it wasn't our fault. But we just, again, we're working really hard all the time just to make sure that, again, we think about that person who's a volunteer. They're not getting paid to do this. How do we make them look like a hero? If we do that, everybody's happy. Because in this business, you need repeat customers. You need people to come back year over year. It's too hard to start over every year, cold calling, running ads, whatever, to go out and get a whole batch of new customers. You need people to come back.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And as you were saying,
Mo money, mo problems.
And as you
What
were
was that,
saying,
Nada?
I said, as you were saying on top of the call, these kids are growing every year. They're going to need,
Right.
uniforms every year. And if you have one bad experience, and if that starts in 2nd grade, then that customer isn't coming back for the duration. But if you give them an amazing experience, they'll come back every year after.
Right.
So I think that's,
Exactly.
it's really wonderful that you're looking at the whole process, from start to
I think it's a
finish.
big challenge for you too, because those communities, these sporting communities, are tight too.
Oh, yeah.
And these parents
Yeah.
all know each other. And if there's a bad experience, they're going to tell everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
It's a real challenge. So I'm curious. So you started this kind of a side hustle. You have grown past, the $1 million mark in revenue, and you're continuing to grow. What was something that you did in those early days that helped you hit that sales number? Rare for businesses to get beyond that 7 figures. So many struggle and never get there. What do you think you did differently that got you there?
I think, honestly, and I saw this on the list of questions that you gave me before the show, which was really helpful.
Don't
It's
tell
just
people that.
persistence. Yeah.
Lance knows already.
We
probably,
don't
but-
want people scared. Yeah, no, it was persistence, right? And really, at that point, I was 100% committed to the business, right? I'd left, my job that I was at had ended, and so I was kind of looking around for something to do. I'd done this. I had a few $1,000s a year in sales, and I kind of felt like I'd always talked about doing my own thing, and I kind of felt like I was being pushed into this, right? Like okay, you always have this excuse. No, there's no excuses. You've got nothing else to do, so do this. And over time, what the thing that I tell my kids is, like, look, my worst day working for myself is better than my best day working for somebody else. And I think it has this, part of it is control, right? Like I know that when it's all going to heck, it's up to me. And I'm okay with that pressure. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people don't want to have that. A lot of people aren't cut out for entrepreneurship, and that's okay, right? There's a certain, whether it's blind spot or just you don't feel certain pain or certain stress, I'm willing to charge in and get that taken care of. So, yeah, I mean, and I would, if I would go back, one of the other challenges when you start something like this is it's easy to chase every dollar, right? Like someone comes in and they're going to give you $1,000 for cups or keychains or something like that. It's easy to get distracted by those things and say, well, look, I need revenue, right? Like I gotta pay the bills. And I think the metric that I go through there is like, okay, can I do this quickly, or is it a distraction, right? And 2, is it something I want to carry forward in my business? Because a lot of times it's not. Like early years we were doing all kinds of silly stuff just because we need to keep the lights on. But that's okay. It got us to where we are today. So it's hard to say it was bad, because in hindsight we're successful.
Right. It's hard to know in those early days. And yeah, you'll do anything.
Yeah.
But
I
got
think
bills
a
to pay.
really
That's
a
what
really good
I tell
point
people
there
too.
is
There's things I don't like to do, but I'm
you'll
like,
do anything to start,
I
and
like
that's
to
fine,
put
but then
food in
stay
my mouth.
focused on your main mission,
So
right? And
Right.
pivot where you can. And then when you are getting those big orders,
We lost you there, Mike. You kind of phased
gosh,
out.
internet. There we go.
Well, yeah, you're making a great point, and I think that's where I would say having you and Mike as partners is good. It's good to have a voice, whether they're active in the business or not active in the business. Someone that is, I like to say, kite versus string, right? Like I'm the kite. I've got a million ideas, and I'm always ready to go, but you need a string that is going to keep you grounded and not necessarily be like an opposing force, but some who's just going to say, hey, let's think about it this way, and does this make sense? Because that's really I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm also old enough to understand that I don't have all the answers, so
fair.
I like to ask questions. Say, here's what I'm thinking, and if someone's like, hey, this is why I don't think that'll work. Not that I just give up on it, but I'm more, as I've gotten older, I'm more prone to accepting that advice, because look, any new thing you're going to do is going to take time and work, and neither of those things are infinite.
Very true. That's absolutely true. I actually really like the kite and the string analogy there. I like that. That's a
So moving forward, as you continue to grow, is it in this? Are you looking for new things? Like, how do you continue to grow revenue from here? Are you looking to grow even? Sometimes businesses are like, yeah, look, I'm happy where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I think we've got some fairly lofty objectives that we want to achieve, but we want to get our processes right first. So we know that right now that's something that my team and I are working on, is really making sure there's Mike, you're probably familiar with this one, which is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. So trying to just trying to get everything so it's not so up and down and herky-jerky all the time, just trying to just smooth things out. So we're really focusing on process right now. Yeah, I would say that I think that there's a good jump in revenue potential just with our current customers, whether it's 20-25%. We really went heavy into team stores the last year and a half, and that's helped, because that was one piece that we knew we were missing out on, because the Spiritwear orders for teams, we would, we'd just get the uniform order over the line in time to get it for the season, and then getting that person to refire up and do Spiritwear was really hard. And two, for us, it just wasn't, we weren't able to get that timing right. Where now, with the web store, we don't have to think about it, right? We build it, we send it to the customer, they send out the link, and they can, as soon as a kid, our goal is that as soon as a kid is told, hey, you're on the Rockets, you're now on the team, get excited, you send a link, and then now they're excited. Now mom wants a hoodie, dad wants a hoodie, hat, shirt, and all that stuff's there. And we've got a great system for producing all of that, and it just saved all that time of the back and forth. And again, if a guy's already bringing in all the uniforms, he's got to separate that. The last thing he wants to do is then bring in a bunch of piles of hats and shirts and stuff like that he's got to sort
all
through
the
and
other
hand
fan
out.
gear.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let me close with this. We're hitting on time. I'll ask you this, and not for your competition. Let's not ask about somebody just starting out in your business. We're not here to help someone compete against you.
Okay, right. Of course, yes.
You mentioned entrepreneurs, so there's a lot of folks out there who love this idea of working for themselves. What would be your advice to somebody who's looking to get started in anything? Now, you have managed to make a success out of this. New entrepreneur out there getting started, what would you say to them today?
I would say that I know you're excited about your idea, and that's great. Just do your research. There's no idea that has to be done today, in my mind. Even in the age of the internet, there's no, whether it's getting on like Amazon FBA programs, all those things that were hot a few years ago, right? Lots of guys are still making money on that type of thing. So there's no idea that you've got to do today. What you do need to do is just make sure that you understand your process, right? From getting the product, selling the product, fulfilling the product, and then more importantly, any customer service issues that happen on the back end of that. How are you taking care of all those things? And as long as you've thought all that through, then I say go for it. But I say all that not wanting to throw cold water on people, but there's just a lot of work. Now, the question could be, Theo, looking back, knowing all that you know now, would you still do it? All the stress, all the sleepless nights, all the things that you went through to get here. I would say yes, right? I'm here for a reason. God's got me here for a purpose, and I believe this is it. So I'm still in. But some people may say, well, no, because if I knew all the stress that I was going to go through. But again, my short answer is do your research.
Love that.
One last question. You got predictions for Illinois lacrosse this year?
Predictions for Illinois lacrosse. Are you asking about the team that I coach?
I know Theo's a coach, everybody, for Wheaton Academy lacrosse. Had a great season last year, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm an assistant on a fantastic team. I'm part of a fantastic program that won the state title in 23, got to the Final Four the 2 years previous to that, and then last year we came up a little bit short. I work with a great group of guys and gals that make this thing really flow. I think we're a good team. I think we're a top 10 team this year. We got a lot of great guys on the team. So we'll just see where it all plays out. But if you're into lacrosse, you gotta find the Illinois accounts on Instagram. They're really entertaining. They're a lot of fun, and it's run by a group of students, I believe, and they do a great job of. They just continue to hone their craft. They have some really good insights on what's happening. So it's a lot of fun. So if you're into lacrosse, and you're into Illinois lacrosse, you can get on Instagram.
That's awesome.
We got it. Yeah. All right, Theo Collins from Areli Sportswear. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for
third guest we've had. Yeah, this was awesome.
You guys, this
you guys awesome. Tune in. We'll have a link in the description for Theo's website. You want to check them out? Custom sports uniforms. We work with Theo, so we know.
That's right. Areli.co. ARELI.co.
There you go. Sell it. You got to sell it.
Yep.
There it is. So follow us again. YouTube, Spotify. You can find us. Check us out on TikTok. We're everywhere. Everywhere you want to be, the old Visa commercial. So
that's right.
Thank you again, Theo.
Thanks,
Thank
Theo.
you for tuning in, everybody. Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.